Who would want to abduct a 4-year-old boy, and why? That's one of the questions I've had to ask myself repeatedly as I've worked on Michael Dunahee's story over the past few years. If you've listened to earlier episodes of Missing Michael, you'll know I've tried to inform my understanding of the case from as many perspectives as possible. I've spoken with Michael's family and friends. I've talked to detectives on the case, including retired police on the file from the start. I've spoken with witnesses, tipsters, experts, and yes, possible suspects too. But in this episode, you'll hear a perspective I've yet to bring to the case. I'm Laura Palmer, and this is Island Crimes Season 3, an update to Missing Michael, Episode 13, The FBI Profile. When I first began researching Michael Dunahee's case, one of the things that struck me was the early involvement of the FBI. In an earlier episode, retired Victoria detective Don Bland told me he picked up the phone and asked the FBI for help.
I contacted the FBI in Quantico, Virginia, and just ran the circumstances of the case by them. They thought they might be of some help to create a profile.
And then, just weeks later, those 9 police detectives from here board a BC government jet and fly down to Quantico to meet with FBI profilers. There's an old CBC documentary from back then. In it, you can see the detectives boarding the plane. They appeared to be carrying rolls of maps and a large poster board covered in plastic. The sky is gray, their faces grim.
The detectives turn outside for help to an FBI unit that collects data on child abductors, tries to calculate the answer to the question that haunts Michael's parents.
I can't figure out for the life of me why someone would want to take Michael.
I spot a young John Ducker with his signature walrus mustache in the group. I spoke with the retired detective about that experience.
We flew down to Quantico, and there was, they train officers in the behavioral profiling from all over the world. So we had a number of sessions and sort of group think on what was going on in a behavioral sense around this abduction.
Even now, it's hard to overstate just how unusual this step was.
For some investigators from Victoria to fly halfway or all the way across the continent to follow up on a possible lead that was unprecedented for sure.
And that's not the end of the FBI's involvement. Later that summer, 3 FBI profilers came to Victoria for further work on the case. As I research through news articles from the time, I see references to the FBI profile created back then. Some of it was released to the public at the time. And yet, for 30 years, there's been next to no information about the personality and behavioral analysis that emerged from the work the Dunahee Task Force did with the FBI. So I make a request to the Victoria Police to see the full FBI profile. After all, it's coming up on 34 years. I can't see how releasing that information now would harm the integrity of any ongoing investigation. But my request is turned down. Now, since I began work on Island Crime, I've been building trust with law enforcement, current and retired. And it's through one of these sources that I've come into possession of more details of that FBI profile. I drive down the island to meet with this source face-to-face. I walk into their kitchen. They shake their head, smile, and ask, "Still tilting at windmills?" I laugh. I'm developing a thicker skin. But make no mistake, I don't see my continued interest in Michael's case as futile. And I'm hoping learning about the profile the FBI created for the suspect in Michael Dunahee's abduction could yet prove helpful. But this profile is more than 30 years old. and I don't have a background in behavioral analysis. I want to understand how the profilers arrived at their conclusions, and what, if anything, this profile means for the investigation now. So I write to two former FBI BAU profilers. Here's what I write. Greetings from Canada. I'm a journalist based on Vancouver Island. On March 24, 1991, 4-year-old Michael Dunahee vanished from Victoria. I've spent the past few years interviewing family, friends, witnesses, experts, retired and current police on the file. The FBI was involved in the case at the time, and I'm hoping you'd be willing to help me interpret the profile information and to answer some questions about the circumstances of the case, which I can bring you up to speed on. Two high-profile former FBI profilers respond and agree to help. You'll hear their perspective in just a few moments. First, though, here's the information I sent them, what I've learned about the suspect profile, developed by the Dunahee Task Force with the assistance of the FBI Behavioral Science Unit in Quantico, Virginia. This is a compilation of information Victoria Police released about the profile back in 1991. And from police notes from that time that I have recently acquired.
The suspect will be normal-looking, may be married or living with a woman and her children, could also be a loner, loitering near playgrounds, will appear to be fond of children, to really care for them. People close to him will know he has deep-seated issues, but are unwilling to confront him. The abduction was well planned. Michael was not the intended victim. More likely to have taken a 10 to 12-year-old boy, but it was a busy day at the park, and there was a short window of opportunity, and the offender took that chance. The victim was in the wrong place at the wrong time. The suspect practiced luring the victim. May have made previous approaches to children not reported at the time. The suspect has a history of pedophilia, likely took a keen interest in the case, kept clippings, and may have participated in the search. The background is that this person may have been ridiculed as a young person, so this may be a power gratification offense, and this suspect may not be a sexual offender in the past. The suspect may be caught in a love-hate relationship. He may love children, but due to his treatment or experience in the past, he may also hate them in his subconscious. The suspect probably knows the area and is comfortable with the surrounding area. Suspect was there on his own personal agenda. He set the timing. This may be a transition offender who progresses through a number of stages. He may prefer or like 12-year-old boys, but a 4-year-old would be less of a threat, as the child would be more controllable and easy to handle. The longer the time between the offense and when the body is located means the suspect is well organized, and that when he abducted the child, he knew where he was going to take him. He is well organized and may keep a record of the offense. It may be in the following forms: a diary, a photo album, or he may have kept an item of clothing. Look for the common person described as transparent. This person would not stand out in the investigation. This is not a visibly disturbed person. He's probably going to be athletic, or at least looks athletic. The suspect is operating on 75% skill and 25% luck. The offense was pre-planned in every detail. He may have done several dry runs. He may have attempted an abduction in the past, but it failed. The suspect was in the area prior to the abduction. It would appear to be normal, again transparent. He wouldn't stand out at this event. The suspect was confident due to his knowledge of the area, and this also indicates the fact he was organized. This was a planned crime, and the victim was one of opportunity. The following is an update on the profile, including some very confidential information not to be released to the media or the public. It should be pointed out that this profile was difficult to develop due to a lack of evidence related to Michael's disappearance. The suspect should be a male Caucasian, 25 to 40 years old, but age is not restrictive. The suspect is classified as a pedophile, and they have a history of recorded sexual offenses, starting with petty incidents such as peeping Tom calls, and gradually progressing to more serious offenses such as touching or grabbing victims, and eventually unsuccessfully attempting to abduct someone. His gender preference would be a male, but the younger the person, the less preference. He may be an interfamilial offender whereby he sexually abuses within his family unit, and may have married an older woman with children from a previous marriage in order to access the children. It is suspected that the suspect has met with resistance when abducting an older victim 10 to 14 years, and therefore has lowered the age level of his victim so as to ensure control. For this reason, any sex offenses in the 2-week period prior to the day of the abduction warrant serious scrutiny. There's a strong possibility that successful or attempted sexual offenses on older males, 10 to 14 years, have not been reported due to the obvious embarrassment the victim is experiencing. It has been recommended that all child molestations within a 5-mile radius of Blanchard Elementary School be researched, and it is requested that any officers with personal knowledge of suspect fitting the profile initiate a report under File 9-106881. It is believed that the offender has frequented the abduction site before. He is classified as an organized offender. His victim's identity is not pre-planned, as he continually fantasizes a totally controlled sexual experience. He prowls productive areas such as parks, playgrounds, public pools, shopping centers, etc., and outwardly appears to be involved in the normal activities surrounding him, but in actual fact is continually analyzing his opportunities to successfully abduct a victim. He will have all other aspects of the abduction well planned, including the con or ruse to abduct the child, his excuse if confronted at the time of the abduction, as well as the place he will take the victim. He will likely have used a vehicle in the Dunahee abduction, and the vehicle will be one that affords an expectation of privacy within, such as a camper or a van with darkened windows. The profile indicates the offender will believe within himself that he truly loves children, and so it is important for investigators not to use sexually deviant labels when referring to the offender. This approach is designed to set a foundation for future interrogation and to hopefully stimulate someone close to the offender to come forth and advise authorities of special problems they're aware of that this offender is experiencing. The offender may have learned to live with his behavior, or may be struggling within himself. He may have booked off sick or exhibited a period of depression or withdrawal after the 24th of March 1991. He may also have become involved in the investigation, such as involving himself in searches or representing himself as a psychic.
Jim Clemente is a retired FBI profiler and a writer-producer on Criminal Minds. He also co-hosts the Real Crime Profile podcast alongside former FBI BAU profiler Kathy Canning-Mello. To be clear, they were not involved in the original investigation, and they did not play a role in creating the profile you just heard described. Still, they have agreed to offer their expertise, and our interview will also air on their podcast, Real Crime Profile, which has a big audience in the USA and will hopefully draw more awareness to Michael's case south of the border.
How you doing? It's Jim Clemente, former FBI profiler, former New York City prosecutor, and writer-producer of Criminal Minds and Bluebeard on Audible. And today we have a very special guest for this crossover episode.
Yeah, hi guys. My name is Laura Palmer, and I'm a veteran journalist and now the host of a podcast called Island Crime. I focus on unsolved murders and missing person cases on Vancouver Island.
Well, it's great to have you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, thank you.
I'm really happy to share. Well, happy's not quite right. I'm grateful to be able to share the information about Michael Dunahee's case and to hear from you guys on the profile. It's something I've been wanting to do for a while since I started looking into Michael's case many years ago.
I think it's a wonderful opportunity, especially because, where you are in Victoria, British Columbia, that's not far from the border. I have not heard anything about this case until you brought it to our attention. So I'm looking forward to be able to hearing about the details and offering some advice with Jim with regard to investigative strategies and the profile itself.
It's interesting to hear that you hadn't heard about the case, and I wondered if that was true. because for Canadians, Michael Dunahee's abduction is like our John Benet Ramsey, our Madeleine McCann. Like Michael's case at the time when he was abducted was just huge. It was probably the first really big child abduction case in Canada. And because it has remained unsolved, it's just a huge mystery here, and one that people still really care very deeply about.
Mm. Well, it happened, while we were in the FBI, but we were not in the behavioral analysis unit at the time of the abduction. I came in 1998.
Right. So a few years after Michael's disappearance. Yeah.
Yeah. But we typically, whenever cases came through, what happened, unsolved cases, every 5 years, we would do a 5-year sort of reinvestigation, reevaluation. And I don't remember ever being brought in on this case. We did a lot of work with the RCMP, but I don't recall it. Do you, Kathy?
No. In fact, I worked from when I left the BAU in 2010. I was an assistant legal attaché in Toronto for a couple of years, and I don't recall hearing about it when I was in Toronto either.
Well, one of the, and it's maybe a factor in why the case is unsolved, is it's initially investigated by the Victoria Police Force, which is one of the police forces here on the island. But Victoria, although it's a relatively small city, has 5 different police jurisdictions. And so, at the time and down the years, there's always been a question as to whether or not that may have hampered the investigation, whether, information wasn't being shared. This is pre-computers, right?
Right.
So that may or may not have been a factor. Some of the police I talked to said it probably was, just because the volume of tips was so huge,
Really?
and these are paper tips coming in, thousands of them, So trying to coordinate that across multiple jurisdictions was probably part of the issue.
Well, can you first just give us a quick thumbnail sketch of what happened to Michael and when?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So it's March 1991, and Michael Dunahee is 4 years old. He's about to turn 5, actually. So he's 4, almost 5.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael lives with his mom and dad, Crystal and Bruce Dunahee, in a city called Victoria, which is our capital city here on the West Coast.
Mm-hmm.
He has a little sister named Caitlin, who at the time of Michael's disappearance is just 6 months old.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're a kind of working class family, just kind of chugging along, busy, active, young family, and very, very ordinary, I would say, and that's something they themselves always talk about. Like, we're just this totally normal family, and then this horrible thing happens to us.
Sure.
On this particular morning, it's a Sunday, and Crystal plays football. So they are going off to a game for Crystal. And that morning, they are driving to the game. They pick up Crystal's friend, Donna, and Michael, Caitlin, Bruce, Donna, and Michael's mom, Crystal, all head off to this ball field.
Mm-hmm.
So they arrive at the ball field, and just as they're kind of getting out, Michael is saying he wants to go play on a little swing set.
And is that the one on the same side of the street or the one across the street?
Same side of the street.
Okay.
So he's, I should say, where this is all taking place, there's a football field, an elementary school. Across from the parking lot is another little park with a swing set. There's also a daycare nearby. It's actually quite a busy little area, lots of people coming and going. And on that day, there were a few different games happening. So there would have been people coming and going from different football games as well. Sorry, go ahead.
And when you say football, are you talking about American football or are you talking about soccer?
No, I'm talking about, what would it be? Flag football, women's flag football.
So
which I didn't know was a thing way back in 1991.
Yeah. But and were all the games that were happening, were they adult games or were there other child games going on?
No, they're adult games going on, but there are other kids there, kids of the other players, kids from the neighborhood.
That's what I was going to ask. So is it normal to have, you said there's a daycare right nearby, there's an elementary school, is that it? True?
Yes, it's on the grounds of it's no longer there, but Blanchard Elementary School was there at the time.
And what day of the week is this? Sorry, it's Sunday?
It's a Sunday, yeah.
And had they ever been to this park before?
Yes, they had been to that park before, but not regularly. So the way the football rotation worked, it was like they could be at a number of different ballparks. So it wasn't like, every first Sunday of the month they're going to be at this place.
Right. And vice versa. He wasn't there the week before on Sunday at this time?
No.
Okay. And when they were there, the parking lot was pretty full?
The parking lot is full, but they are arriving a little bit early because they're going to warm up and because Michael's baby sister, Caitlin, has, like babies, they have a lot of stuff with them, carriages and bags and things. And so Bruce needs to help his wife, Crystal, with Caitlin's, with all of her things. And so he is helping them over to the football field. And Michael says, I'd like to go play at the swing set. This is only like 100 yards away. It's not far. And so the deal is, okay, Michael, you can go there. There's other kids there. His dad's going to drop off the stuff, come back, and they'll meet up then.
All right. So the swing set is 100 yards away from where they parked. How far is the field and where they set up the carriage and all her equipment? How far is that from where they parked?
Again, not far. Like I've walked it like 50 yards, Okay.
So, and does that make, is it exactly a straight line? So is the father and mother now 150 yards away from the target swing?
Yeah, that would be about right.
Okay. And obstructions, trees, cars,
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, there's some rocks. So like a rock outcrop on the side of the field between the parking lot and the field. There is some rocks that would have obstructed the view. From
where he was to where the swing set is, or the parking lot.
Yes. I should say we don't actually know if he ever made it to the swing set.
Well, that's one of the things we were going to say. So, yeah, we can talk about that. But do you have any other specific questions about that part, Kathy?
I don't.
It probably took, if they got there at 12:35 and then, getting out of the car and having this little discussion about whether he can go or not, and then, bundling up the other kid and getting everything over to the field. We're probably talking about, 12:45, maybe 12:50 before he starts going back to the 150 yards to where the swing is.
Yeah. The exact time, I think you're right. I think it is about that time. The Dunahees have always said, we're talking minutes here.
Right.
One of the police officers I spoke with said it was probably a little longer than that, like maybe 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, something like that. I did speak with one woman who recalls the week prior to this, it was there had been a St. Patrick's Day party, and they had all been there. And so that morning, it was the first time that they could look at pictures from the party. And so the woman I spoke with recalled, stopping Bruce and Crystal as they're walking towards the field to stop and show them these pictures. And so, when you think about a little moment like that, that could have made it like a little bit longer as they stopped and looked at the pictures, right?
Right. But the important thing is that, this thing happened incredibly quickly. It could not have been something that, because of the randomness of them deciding, I mean, it's the first time they let him run off to the playground on his own. This is not something that they could have anticipated at all. So it makes it a very, although the motivation may have been present before, it makes it a very impulsive, on the spot decision to do this.
I agree. And the first call, Laura, comes into the police at 1:06.
That's right.
Correct?
Yeah.
So not a whole lot of time was spent searching for him before they raise the alarm and call police.
That's right. It's pretty quick. Bruce just goes back to the field, says, "Hey, I can't find Michael," and the game never starts. They had just been warming up. Everybody drops what they're doing and starts searching right away. But because he's such a little guy, they very quickly decide to call the police, run over to a neighbor across from the field and make that call.
Right. Okay. And so do you have specific questions for us about the profile?
I do.
Okay.
So these are based on the notes that I sent you about what I've learned about the profile, both from media reports at the time and from some police notes that I've been able to see about the profile. And so I'd love to just ask you a few questions. You guys have had a chance to take a look at some of this.
Sure.
I guess, first of all, I've told you basically the circumstances. And as you can tell, in some ways, there's not much evidence to work with.
Right.
And so I guess I wonder what would they have used to inform the profile given those circumstances?
We did a study in the BAU in 2000 of all the abductions from the previous 10 years in the United States. And we were able to sort of narrow down the motivations, but we were able to narrow down a lot of information based on the age of the victim and gender and motivation of the offender. And we saw a certain percentage, a small percentage, that were sort of revenge oriented or money oriented. And then there was false allegation cases that actually were not abductions, but made to look like abductions. And there are maternal desire cases in which a woman wanted a baby and basically abducted a baby from a hospital. And then there were sexually motivated cases, and that was a little over 50% of the cases. So we have to weed out the other ones, right? And there's no indication for this family. They were just average people that somehow somebody had a vendetta against them and took their son to punish them, or that they were involved in the drug trade and they didn't make a payment, so they got, this was, the way that their son gets kidnapped so they could get paid back. Maternal desire is generally something that's, very, newborns are typically the targets of that. And then, sexually motivated ones they're the biggest majority of the motivations behind these kind of cases. So by studying all the cases in the United States, we come up with patterns. We see patterns. When you see that this child had not been there repeatedly, and that there was no opportunity for somebody to have planned to take that specific child, well, that tells you something about how the offender operates. They clearly took advantage of an opportunity. So does that mean that they have been laying in wait in that place every day and, just happened that he walked into their clutches? It's possible. It's also possible that the person had been fantasizing about this for a long time, and for whatever reason, their inhibitions were reduced drastically, because this is a high risk. Their inhibitions were reduced because of drug or alcohol abuse or extreme stress in their life or some other reason. So, this person acted in a way that took a great risk, and it was probably only, a fortuitous series of events. The woman, having their hands full with all the other child and all their stuff, and getting, thinking about the game, and somebody stopping them to look at photos, and then being behind that rock outcropping, all those things aided the offender in doing what they did. And I believe, and I'll let Kathy speak for herself, but I believe this happened within a minute of him turning around and going towards the playground.
Agreed. This is what we consider a routine activities theory crime, right? Where you have a confluence of a motivated offender, of an available and vulnerable victim, and lack of a capable guardian, which in this case, where you have a crowded parking lot, there are other potential witnesses. So you're dealing with someone who has to act quickly so that he doesn't draw attention. And I agree with the profile that mentions him, or they describe him as somebody who's transparent. It's obviously he's not transparent, but he's somebody that blends in. He's not somebody that, is sticking out like a sore thumb. So he's got to move quickly and grab this kid. And likely he's got a truck or a van or some vehicle that's going to allow him a measure of privacy quickly, so that he doesn't raise alarms, and that he can get out of that area very quickly. And this is, we see that many, many times throughout our working in the BAU of these types of abductions that happen very quickly. And oftentimes it's when the child is doing something routine. And in this case, he's, running to the playground. And we oftentimes see these types of cases when kids are dropped off the bus and they're walking home, and they're only walking a quarter of a mile, but they're at that vulnerable place in space and time where somebody can grab them and lure them quickly. We don't know what type of lure this person may have used, but with a 4 or 5 year old, I have candy in the truck, or can you help me find my puppy? And all those things have been successful in these types of cases.
And one other thing is that, I believe he got out of there immediately, either by putting the child in a vehicle, or I don't know what the area was. Like if it was right by a wooded area, and on the other side of that wooded area is another road or a parking lot or some places he could have a vehicle stashed, then he may have gone through if he was that prepared, he may have gone through a wooded area to get to a place like that. If that doesn't exist, then almost absolutely he had a vehicle and put the kid in the vehicle immediately and got out of there immediately, probably before the parents even set down their stuff by the field. And that is just unfortunately how fast it can happen. Now, this person, I agree with Kathy in the profile too, that this person would not have stood out. Doesn't look like, a stereotypical sex offender, as if there is a stereotypical image, but he doesn't look like, the guy, lurking behind the tree and in the park. He in a trench coat and serial killer glasses. This guy looks normal, and he might be an older gentleman, with, grandfatherly looking or uncle looking. And he might be somebody younger, because those people are more impulsive, but he also does not have the skills to groom a child. And that is why he's resorting to the high risk behavior of child abduction, because no matter what, when a child gets abducted, the alarms go off immediately. When a child gets groomed, people don't generally know about it for 10, 20, 30 years. So offenders can get away with it much more by grooming a child into a situation where they can take advantage of them sexually versus snatching a kid from a public place where there's any number of potential eyewitnesses. So the offender, I would suspect, does not have very good interpersonal skills or the ability to manipulate a child into a situation of sexual victimization.
Can you just expand a little on this idea that the profile kind of talks about the abduction being well planned, but that Michael not necessarily being the intended victim?
Well, that's almost absolutely true, because they couldn't have predicted that Michael would be there. But the well planned, I would call it well fantasized rather than well planned. Mm-hmm. I do not believe that the person absolutely knew that if I stand here at this particular time, I'm going to be able to find a kid, throw him in my truck, and get out of there before anybody says anything. I think that they fantasized about doing it a lot, and, you know, playing this fantasy over and over and over again in their minds. But generally, they may have come up with lures, you know, like Kathy said, I lost my puppy, I lost my kids, I have some candy, you know, hey, my son wants to play with you too, you know, whatever it is, they had that, you know, planned in their mind as the way to lure the child, and it worked. Or, I believe that it is also possible that there was such a low threat level to this offender coming from, this victim did not anticipate the threat because of either this guy's appearance or his approach, or it could have been a female. I don't know if anybody's ever mentioned this, but it could have been a female accomplice who helps a guy, you know, typically a paramour of hers, get access to kids. We've certainly seen cases of that historically, and there's, you know, the slightest chance that a woman who comes to this park because she knows the parents bring their kids and she doesn't have kids and she wants a kid, you know, sort of a twist on the maternal desire, which is typically aimed at very young kids, you know, infants, newborns. But, you know, I just wonder if in the same vein that as the profile says, this offender could have been attempting to get a 10 or 12 or teen boy, but they're much more difficult to control. And so this vulnerable, available, not so desirable younger child was there, so he took advantage of that. It could also be sort of the female version of that, where if they wanted a child and this kid just happened to be running towards them, and the boy would not be threatened by a woman saying, "Oh, baby," you know, and giving him a hug, and then seeing his parents walking away and taking advantage of the opportunity. I'm just trying to think outside the box, because for 30 years, nothing has come to fruition on this. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, and I would put that as a
very,
lower
very
priority.
Low. Yes.
Only because in the maternal desire cases that we typically have, it's a newborn, right? And oftentimes, Jim, when we see that these cases are often solved successfully because someone around the offender recognizes that, wait a minute, you know, this is a child that doesn't, and in this case, doesn't look like a newborn, right? This kid's 5, and he looks remarkably like this kid on television where they're saying that this child's missing, you know. So typically those are the way that those cases are solved, you know, because it's like, well, you know, they claimed that they were pregnant, but I don't know, I had suspicions, and now this child looks like the child that's been
right. But what
missing,
I'm thinking is more in terms of, you know, because typically in that case, in maternal desire cases, you know, the woman brings the child home. If she has a partner, you know, a husband or a boyfriend, they know, you know, if she's been faking she's pregnant, for example, and, you know, they know this is not, she couldn't pull that off with this kid. But if this paramour is an offender, then she may have taken advantage of that situation and brought the kid home to an environment where they both were happy with the abduction. So that's what I'm saying. Not that she would have just, brought it home and then raised it as her own kid, as if there was, it was hers. But because there are, we've unfortunately seen a number of cases in which women have been facilitators in abductions. Sure. and as horrific as this may sound, it's a less lethal situation. So it's actually not the worst outcome.
Right. Sorry, go ahead.
I also do agree with the profile that says, this person likely has had previous attempts, abduction attempts of children, just to kind of practice the lure and making sure that he's well prepared in order to have a successful abduction. So maybe, do you know, Laura, if I'm assuming that the police looked at all attempted abductions before and after this crime occurred around the city of Victoria, hopefully? Well,
I'm just going to tell you, I am getting a little bit of chills up my spine as we're talking, because you both have led me to the suspects that I wanted to talk to you about.
Okay.
So this was...
And these people know I'm assuming they know their suspects if we're going to talk about them.
Oh, I'm not going to name them. Because they've never been charged in Michael's case. But I have reported on them in my series about Michael, simply by calling them the Brown Van Man and his partner. It's been a couple of years since I released the last Missing Michael updates. In those updates, I focused on the man in the brown van. If you haven't already heard those episodes, I'd encourage you to go back and listen. I still believe this man and his partner are the most promising suspects in Michael's abduction. They are the top of the list for me. The new Victoria Police investigative lead on Michael's case has declined my repeated requests to speak about the suspect. So I don't know what, if anything, has been done as a result of my stories. I remain committed to doing what I can to push the investigation forward. But sometimes I have doubts. Have I developed tunnel vision on the Brown Van Man and his partner? Has confirmation bias blinded me to other possibilities? So I take my opportunity to talk to Jim and Kathy about these suspects. Your question, Kathy, about any prior attempted abductions, I only learned, I guess it's about 2 years ago now, and the public had never known this before, that about a year and a half before Michael is taken, there was an attempt abduction in virtually the exact same spot.
Wow.
Yeah, so September 1989, a little boy, he's 3, is being lured by a man into a brown van, and a woman named Beverly Morrison just happens to see what's going on and intervenes. And they get into a bit of an argument, and he's kind of saying, hey, mind your own business. She calls the police.
Thank God.
Thank God, exactly. And the police come. He's taken off at this point, but she's got his license plate, and he's identified. But unfortunately, it's one of those things where it seems like nothing really further happened on that file.
It wasn't really taken that seriously.
No.
And then
they didn't search his vehicle
at that time. Sorry. So he doesn't abduct that little 3-year-old boy. The woman steps in. That doesn't happen. He takes off. Right. So
But the police don't search his vehicle anyway. I mean, was he interviewed about the attempted abduction?
He's not interviewed about the attempted abduction.
Oh, geez. And so they didn't try to find out if they had restraints in the van or anything like that?
No.
Okay. All right.
So it only unfortunately comes to light years later.
After this.
Yeah, after Michael is taken.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to me is really only taken seriously about 15 years after the fact, when a new cold case detective comes and is kind of going through everything and sees this and thinks, whoa, this looks like a really, really good suspect. They do a lot of work. You know, they actually buy the vehicle. It's been sold by then, but they track it down and they buy the van. And as far as I know, to this day, still have the van.
And assuming they have done a full forensic search of the van.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, they do some surveillance of this guy. They learn a lot about him.
Sure.
But they never have enough to bring charges.
Okay.
And so the other, maybe I should just tell you a little bit about what I've learned about him.
Yeah.
Because I would love to hear your thoughts on him and whether he fits. I have to say, when I heard about that attempt abduction, I really felt like, you tell me, it seemed so unusual. And I know, like, stranger abductions themselves are so unusual. So the idea of this happening in the same place just a year or so prior, it felt really significant to me.
Yep.
Yeah, it is significant. I mean, this is something that, you know, we started implementing. I think Jennifer Aiken really spearheaded that in our unit, right? Mm-hmm. Kathy? I mean, because generally they would be looking for, you know, abductions in the area, but we created the data points of all the attempted abductions in the area or nearby, so that, because somebody could have seen a license plate in the attempt, but not in the actual abduction. So it really can, you know, really help provide serious leads and conclusions to cases.
Well, in that case, the woman who observed that attempt abduction said he was using McDonald's toys. Like that was the lure, was trying to get this little guy away with McDonald's toys. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But so what I've been able to learn about this guy is he is, at the time of Michael's abduction, in his 50s.
There you go.
He's come on the police radar because he is being accused of how should I say this? Mating horses for his own enjoyment. Oof. He works in a stable, and the owner of the stable believes that's what's happening.
Got it.
And so the police come upon him, you know, they do a stakeout, they find him in the middle of the night, nude in the bushes. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's how he first kind of comes on their radar. Mm-hmm. Subsequently, he is identified as being a suspect in abusing a neighbor's child and also his partner's child.
His partner being?
So yeah, yes, this is the other piece. So he has a common law partner, a woman who he lives with, who has a young daughter. She seems to cover for him in these instances. Mm-hmm. For example, in the incident with the horses, he calls her to come down to the station when he's been brought in. And he suddenly can't speak English at that point. He's from Croatia, this guy. Yeah. But police have previously had conversations with him where he's speaking English just fine. And so, but she comes down and says, "Oh, no, he doesn't speak English. He didn't understand that you were the police. He was just out for a walk. This is something Europeans do, apparently. A very odd thing to say. And also when he is accused of assaulting her daughter, also doesn't want to have anything to do with police at that point either."
How old was the daughter?
At that point, she was 12, but I don't know for how long. I did try to speak with her, and she, understandably, wants nothing to do with either of these two, and just didn't want to talk about it.
Got it.
Was he criminally charged?
No. Well, no. He's never been convicted
of the abuse of the children.
Because the mother
intervened in the case of the daughter, and the neighbor's child. They only came forward like years after, when the girl was an adult, and she really just wanted. It appears, just wanted to come forward for the sake of wanting to get it off her chest, but didn't want to take it any further.
And how old was she when she was victimized?
I think around 10.
Is this suspect, is he still alive? Because he was 50s during the...
Well, I am sorry to say, and not sorry to say, he died last year. And so I did attempt to interview him. I went to their home, and I did speak with her a couple of times. But he was quite ill by the time I went to talk to him, and they wouldn't let me in the house to talk to him. So I guess the other part that I would add to this part of the story, there is a woman who claims to have witnessed this abduction.
Really?
So she's a realtor named Norma, who is still alive. She went to police at the time, said she saw a man in a brown van parked around the corner, and she saw this woman, basically, she describes it as tackling Michael and dragging him off to the van.
And that was not investigated at the time?
Well, she believes she wasn't taken seriously. Down the years, some of the police I've spoken with who went back and talked to her again do believe her and say they find her credible. But
I find her credible, and I've never met her.
Well, she's...
How would she... Wait, this is a very critical point. Was it in the news a year and a half earlier when a brown van attempted abduction happened at that location?
No, it's never been in the news.
How would she... Right, so how would she ever know that information that corroborates itself by unpublished history?
Well, there is actually another little bit of information that makes me think what she's saying happened. Michael that day is wearing a pair of pants that his mom made him that are kind of colorful patches of fabric. And
yes.
That wasn't initially released. And Norma knew that.
Jesus Christ.
She actually described them as ugly pants, but she did describe the pants.
What was Norma doing at that park that day?
Yeah, so Norma is she was a realtor back then. Yep. And the realtor's office is not far from there. And she said she had a few different sales on the go and had some paperwork she had to do. And so she's in her car, and she says she stopped at the lights when she sees what she first thinks is a little boy running and an older girl chasing him. And she says in her mind, oh, geez, kids, like, I better watch myself. They could just run out in front of the car.
Right.
But she says it's not until they get closer that she realizes that it's not a kid. The woman is not a kid. It's a woman. And in her head, and again, this is doesn't reflect well on Norma in some ways, but she says she thought the woman looked indigenous, and in her head she thinks, oh yeah, those Native people sure dress their kids funny, is what's in her head. Although she's thinking, Michael doesn't look like this woman's child, because Michael is fair and blonde haired, and the woman is darker complexion. She thinks indigenous.
And how does that square with the partner of Mr. Brown Van?
Well, according to one police officer I spoke with, who had the drawing that Norma did and a picture of Brown Van Man's partner, like identical.
And you met the partner years later?
I met her briefly in person before she kicked me out of her house,
right.
and a couple of phone conversations.
And does she have any, indication to you that she looked indigenous?
No, she's, I think her background is Portuguese.
Okay,
but I'll just say this. My husband is indigenous, and he frequently gets mistaken for being like Chinese or, Indonesian or whatever. It would not surprise me to have someone think someone who had dark hair and a dark complexion, particularly on Vancouver Island, could be mistaken for being indigenous.
But does your husband dress the kids in ugly pants? I'm sorry.
Maybe.
We have to do this just to keep from going crazy with all the...
No, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Laura, I just wanted to mention this case. Are you familiar with the Morgan Nick case from Alma, Arkansas?
I'm not. No.
Okay.
Tell me.
When I first read the details of this case, like, gosh, this reminds me of this Morgan Nick case that coincidentally was sort of solved last year, even though her abduction very similarly happened in June of 1995 in Alma, Arkansas. She and her mom and her brother were at a Little League game. So same kind of circumstances. They arrive at the Little League game and the mom is focused on the son on the Little League field. And Morgan, who's 6 at the time, says, I want to go play
with the other kids. They were catching fireflies, right?
Right, yeah, going to catch fireflies. And so she's just gone for a couple of minutes, and then Colleen, mom, she turns around and Morgan's gone. It just as quickly as it happened in the Michael Dunahee case. But in that case, there was a red truck that was seen. But in several months after this happened, there was another attempted abduction, so not successful. And a suspect by the name of Billy Jack Lynx was identified, and he had a red van. He was convicted of that attempted abduction. Of course, he was interviewed about Morgan's abduction. He says, I don't know anything about it. So it's just left there. He's in prison. He ended up dying in prison in 2000. But it wasn't until just a few years ago when another Alma police officer picks up the case and he says, you know what, I'm going to go try to find this vehicle, try to find Billy Jack Link's vehicle that he owned way back in 1995. And believe it or not, although the vehicle, the red truck, was sold and resold many times, they were able to find it. And the new owner allowed the police to do a forensic search, vacuuming of the entire truck. And lo and behold, there was a hair that was recovered that ended up being a hair belonging to either Colleen Nix or Morgan Nix, right? So it's a mitochondrial DNA test that they have to do on this hair strand because there's no genetic material attached. So they do the test, and of course, Colleen had already submitted her DNA years and years before. and they end up identifying that hair as likely belonging to Morgan Nick. Of course, they go to Colleen and say, is there any reason why Morgan Nick's hair should be found in Billy Jack Link's vehicle? She says, no, we don't even know this guy. So he is identified likely as the perpetrator of her abduction. Sadly, he's dead, and sadly, Morgan Nick has never been found. But the point that I'm raising is if hopefully they have done a forensic search, but there's 1 in a million chance, a needle in a haystack, that they'll be able to find a hair that belongs to Michael Dunahee or, another victim, perhaps.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's my understanding they did that, but that was now more than 15 years ago. So.
Yeah, DNA science has advanced leaps and bounds in 15 years.
Yeah, that is incredible. And I should say one other thing that I didn't mention. There is another witness, a child, who was at the playground, and that's where the brown van actually the brown van is first identified by a child who's there.
I mean, on this day?
Yes. When Michael is taken, there is a 10-year-old child who says there's a brown van there, and that's when police first take interest in a brown van. They today say they're no longer sure that the child's information is credible because they think she was just trying to be helpful, and so.
Yeah, but did they say, has anybody seen a brown van? Or did she say, I saw a brown van?
She said, I saw a brown van.
Right. So give me a break. What are they doing?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, they're finding ways to discredit things that are self-corroborative. She didn't know about the earlier abduction attempt either.
Right.
No. No.
It's just so frustrating.
That is a lead that's just screaming out to do other forensic searches in that van.
Yes.
Jim, I don't know if you have any other thoughts, but to me, that's the first thing that pops in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
she's still alive.
Who's she?
Oh, sorry. His partner.
Okay. Well, and that van, they need to take the floor out. They need to dismantle everything, and, it's not possible to reconstruct the clothing if they didn't do it at the time. But if she made the clothing and they said, what was he wearing? And she said, oh, I cut it out of this pattern, or I created it out of this, then maybe they do have the clothing, but you might find fibers from that clothing. You might find hair, and you might find DNA still.
And also where he was living at the time, his residence, if he had any storage lockers, anything that belonged to that guy should be forensically searched.
Right. And I mean, are they still living in the same home?
They're not. I've been to the house they were living at the time, and know the area well. There is, you know what? I'm realizing I've left out another kind of important piece about him. Do you have time?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a few more minutes.
Just before Michael is abducted, a young sex worker is murdered in the area. Actually, a number of young sex workers are murdered in the area.
Oh,
but one of them is found in almost the exact same spot where he is nude, sunbathing, or whatever he's doing with the horses. That's where her body is found, and her killer has never been found.
There's a big particular paraphilia that it's called sexually diverse, where people have multiple paraphilias, all right, where they're sexually attracted to inanimate objects, animals, non-consenting partners like children. And so if he was actually sexually assaulting animals, or if he could have been out there doing something else, and they didn't find the body that night that they chased him naked out of the field. But, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if he was just a sexually diverse offender who basically was looking for all sorts of different types of sexual stimulation, fantasies and stuff. So, and pedophilia is certainly one of the paraphilias that fit into that, umbrella paraphilia of sexually diverse.
I interviewed his brother and asked him about all of this. And his brother said something which I thought was quite odd. He said something along the lines of he just couldn't believe his brother would have been guilty of abducting Michael. But he said, if you told me it was a woman, maybe, like his brother thought he was perhaps capable of something awful, but not of a child. And I didn't really know what to make of that.
Was the brother aware of the abuse allegations from the brown van man's daughter?
No.
Okay.
And the brother didn't know about the neighbor either?
No, the brother is, estranged is probably too strong a word, but they really didn't have anything to do with each other later in life, although they live very close to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the thing is that sexual activity is typically private, and illegal sexual activity is extremely private. So there's no reason why the brother would have any, actual knowledge or feeling that, unless he was dragged through the mud publicly and everybody knew about it. It doesn't sound like that happened.
I wanted to ask you guys, as soon as I found out about that piece of information, I had been looking at other suspects and other people who had been looked at down the years. But I really felt, I felt like this was my best suspect by far. But I guess I'm curious when you hear about him, like, do I have tunnel vision here? Am I is it wrong to be so focused on him, do you think?
I'll let you go first, Kathy.
No, I would consider him suspect number one in this investigation that needs to be fully vetted and investigated, and all the leads need to be drawn all the way down to the ground before you eliminate this guy.
Right, and Flores, he and her hits everything that we said.
Yeah.
I mean, it's exactly what we described without knowing anything about brand vans and prior abductions. I mean, it's a lot of times police officers don't believe that an offender like this could be married, but there are facilitating partners. And unfortunately, they cover for the offenders and they let them get away with it, and they help them get away with it repeatedly. Yeah. And maybe it's because, well, they're being coercively controlled. Maybe it's because they're being abused, and maybe it's because, they don't give a damn themselves. And I've even had one case in the UK where the woman was driving it. The man was sort of, he facilitated, but she was the one driving the offenses. So, I think they're very, very, very good suspects. And, man, it just seems like there's so many opportunities that were just lost really early on to focus. If they had, put the prior abduction attempt together with what that boy said in the parking lot and what that real estate agent said, I mean, all three of those things cross-corroborate each other, and that would have been enough for a search warrant for me, and, I would have been banging down a magistrate's door to get them to sign it.
But I think there's still some room here for investigations forensically, right? I think, of course, the partner's probably not going to give consent. Or you said they lived somewhere differently in 1995 than they do now. And you remember, Jim, in the Ivanitz case, after he was shot himself while under that police search. He was responsible for the abductions and murders of several girls in Fredericksburg, Virginia, back in the 90s as well, 95 to 97. But after he committed suicide, the case was solved at that point. They had, direct lines to him in the victims. The police went to where he was living. He was no longer living there, but he had a residence in Fredericksburg, and the police conducted a forensic search of his previous home, and they found all kinds of evidence from the girls, their hair, some clothing fibers, some fibers that he had used to handcuff the girls that were found in other locations.
And metal shavings from his shop that had been found on the girls.
Right. So I think the police, they have room now to try to find whoever is living in that residence to go back in there and conduct a thorough forensic search, if they agree to that.
Yeah, that home and the vehicle, as far as I know, is still in their possession, and the home that they have lived in since then, she still lives in now.
Mm-hmm. It should probably be the home that they used to live in, and in any surrounding area and any outbuildings, they should try to get consent search, and just do everything. Bathrooms and kitchens and woodsheds and garages and basements and sheds, all that kind of stuff should be searched.
Yeah, and any other vehicles that he may have owned back then.
Yeah.
Well, can I ask you, and I don't know if this is an area you're comfortable venturing a thought on, but what do you think it would take for her after all these years, if it is true that they were involved? What do you think it would take for her to, really, for Michael's family, they just want Michael,
Sure.
What do you think it would take for, and I know there's a lot you don't know and I don't know about her, but any thoughts on that at all?
She doesn't sound like a compassionate, empathetic person, so I don't know if that would help.
No.
I think the opposite end, if you at least make her believe, like that you did all these searches are happening and all this evidence is going to be found and it's renewed interest and it's coming down on her and this is her only opportunity. I don't know, maybe she won't want to spend her last 5 days in jail or something.
Mm-hmm. How old is she now?
Well, she was quite a bit younger than him. She's in her early 70s, I think now.
Oh, okay.
But she is in poor health.
Well, I think it's definitely a chance and important to talk to her as she's
worth a shot,
heading towards the grave. This is your opportunity to get things right. I don't know if she's a religious person or not, but that would be an angle.
She is.
Yeah. Well, then I would use that angle.
Yeah.
Yes, I even thought at one point of trying to see if her priest would talk to her.
Sure.
I don't know, yeah. But yeah.
Does she have a relationship with her daughter still or no?
No, her daughter wants nothing to do with her at all.
And that's an angle I would use too. Like even your own children don't want anything to do with you. This is your opportunity to make things right. And perhaps, bygones will be bygones, and try to establish some kind of relationship with your children as, in your very older age.
It's very difficult to do, but we've done it in the past where we have wired up the daughter to go back to talk to.
Yeah, I don't know what the laws
Mom
in Canada
Dad.
are around consensual monitoring, if you can do that.
I did find one relative of hers who said they would talk to her for a price, and I of course can't.
Wow.
I can't do that.
A very transactional person.
Sounds exactly like a relative of her.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, and I did explain the nature of the possible crime, thinking maybe that would be open this person up to just talking, but they were like, no, I don't have the same passion. What was the wording? I don't have the same passion for this as you do. Something like that,
Gosh.
Right, but The problem is, if you pay to anybody, then anything they said, anything they got was going to be tainted. So it's just not possible. And no, law enforcement can't either. I mean, it's useless. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't and wouldn't.
Well, yeah.
I've already taken up probably way more time than you guys have in your day with this, but it's been just fascinating to hear from you guys. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you for providing us with the information, and thank you for your work on the case.
I hope that they continue on with this investigation.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how grateful I am that Jim and Kathy agreed to speak with me about Michael's case. But as I listened back to the tape, I realized I neglected to ask them a question I had about another aspect of the profile.
Note: the following information is extremely confidential. There will probably be a repeat offense. The suspect will revert back to past behavior. He will not necessarily abduct and murder again right away, but he will eventually have to repeat again to reach the ultimate gratification of control and power again. The profiler's opinion is that once the media attention subsides, this offender will commence his deviant sexual activities, possibly starting with less serious offenses and progressing to another abduction, with the strong possibility the victim will be murdered. Therefore, all sexual offenses, no matter how trivial, should be thoroughly investigated with statements obtained if possible. Should another abduction occur, the first few hours are critical, and it is recommended that all media be immediately accessed with strong pleas by close relatives to have the victim released in a public place. The victim should be personalized through the use of photos and Christmas videos, as initially the offender will view the victim as an object. We have initiated plans with the Greater Victoria Police Departments to organize an operational plan, which could be immediately implemented in the event another abduction or other serious incident occurs.
So, why wasn't there another child abduction after Michael Dunahee? Why does it appear that this may have been a one-off? Here's how Jim Clemente responds when I follow up. He writes, "Unsubs are mobile and can offend in different jurisdictions, and their crimes may not be connected. Also, there can be other ways they sublimate their motivations, or their desires can evolve over time. They may be satisfied to live in an abusive, controlling relationship that satisfies their desires and needs." This profile, these observations from Jim and Kathy, they've given me a lot to chew on. I've shared this information with the Victoria Police. I hope it's helpful. And I'll see if there is any way for me to move it forward. In the meantime, please continue to support Michael Dunahee's family in their annual Keep the Hope Alive March, happening Sunday, March 23rd, 2025. You can find out all about it and how to take part by going to their Facebook page. We will never forget Michael Dunahee. I'm Laura Palmer, and this is Season 3 of Island Crime, Missing Michael. Please take a moment to rate and review this podcast.
Michael Dunahee loved the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Back when Michael was a little guy, loving the magic of the turtles, I had the privilege of being the voice of Michelangelo. I'm Townsend Coleman, a voice actor, and one of the many people who want answers in Michael's case. The Turtles were crime fighters who believed in justice. If you have any information about Michael, please head to michaeldunahee.ca and click on the Report a Tip button.